Yeah, I feel very impassioned this morning to talk about compromise. Yeah, compromise is something that will have you out of integrity with your sense of self, which means you'll have lost awareness of your true identity, and therefore you've completely lost awareness of the identity of the seeming others that you're interacting with. Compromise usually occurs with this perception of two and this idea of one relating to another. And your compromise will always be in this preservation of this sense of self, this false self, this self-concept that you think you are. And so it is extremely dangerous to allow yourself to become compromised and out of awareness with that. It is one of the first places that people, when they become very deeply devoted to a particular spiritual path, become aware of the internal conflicts in their own mind. And so rather than focusing on the external compromises, we want to use those compromises that you start to notice and form to draw awareness to the conflicting beliefs, thoughts, and desires in your mind. Because basically the desire is to not know thyself. And so it's in direct opposition to the desire that you've begun your spiritual path with, which is to come into a full, alive awareness of who you are and therefore awaken. So here we go. What is it that you're being asked to do when you're asked to look at the compromise in your life? Well, you're asked first to notice how you feel all the time. Notice when you feel conflicted. Notice when you perceive that there's a certain response required in a certain type of situation. Notice that you perceive yourself to be playing a certain type of role in relation to one family member versus another family member. Notice that there's a different way you are when you're out with your mates in the bar, and you're a different way to how you are when you're speaking to your boss at work. These are all forms of compromise that can be traced back to see a conflict in the mind about who you are. That's all that's at issue here. It's an identity crisis. Anytime there's compromise, it's an identity crisis. Because the wonderful thing about being restored to knowing thyself is that it serves the whole. Because first and foremost, it's inclusive, not exclusive. There's no hierarchy here. It's an all-inclusive awareness of Christ, and therefore there's no need to interact as if there's another. There is a deep respect, an absolute reverence, and a joy in meeting your brother and sister upon the way. So here we go. How am I compromising today? And the question is, how am I not myself? How am I not myself? How am I not myself? And a very good movie to watch to answer this question is I Heart Huckabees. And in this movie, the main character invites two existentialist detectives into his life to take a really good look at it. And he goes, you need to follow me in my life and take a really good look at it? And they say yes, because even the way you masturbate could be the key to your entire reality. And he's like, oh. And he goes, oh, okay. And then he goes, there's just one thing I'm going to have to ask you. And they're like, what? And say, yeah, I'm just going to have to ask you to stay away from my work. Yeah, that wouldn't be good for me if you came to my workplace. And so we see that the invitation already to look and see is compromised. And anywhere you don't want to ask the Spirit for guidance on your life is the very place that there'll probably be bucket loads of compromise. And so you're never asked or forced to allow this to happen to you. You are gently encouraged to see that this is an internal conflict that keeps playing out an external compromise, and it makes you feel bad. And so by convincing you on the areas that you're open to allowing the Spirit into your life and allowing the Spirit to help and support you by showing you where you're mistaken about the world you see, how you're compromising yourself by not understanding the truth of who you are, then you can be restored to an awareness of what is true by simply following guidance and looking with the vision of the Spirit. So that's an excellent watch if you want to look at this idea of the self-concept. And in A Course in Miracles, it's called the self-concept versus the self. And this is where all compromise occurs.